Calling the meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission, February 16th of 2022, 7 p.m. First of all, if you're going to wish to speak, come up and fill out a form and give it to her. Yes. And then this commission is a voluntary commission, staffed by volunteers, of course. And we are not city employees. We make recommendations to the city council. And there's a whole big spiel that I'm supposed to say, and I can't remember 3/4 of it. But if you have any, we allow the public to speak. We limit it to usually 5 minutes. And you can only speak one time on a topic. And with that, we start the meeting, calling it to order. Introduction of commission members.
Mike Clayton.
Doug Regaller.
John Emery.
Ruth Holstrom.
Anupreet Minhas.
Okay, asking for the approval of the agenda.
I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. So approved. Asking for the approval of the minutes of the January 19th, 2022 meeting.
I'd move approval.
Second.
And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. So approved. Now we come up to the public forum. If the public has any comments on anything that is not included on the agenda tonight and wish to come forward to speak, you may come forward now. And we always ask that you come up to the podium so everything can be heard and recorded. And seeing none, the public forum is closed. Item number 6, the public hearing for the major site development plan for 1913 and 1915 Duff Avenue and 115 9th Street.
Good evening. Forrest Olson, who is here, is the applicant for the property here on 2 lots facing Duff, and then there's a skinny vacated alley that goes down to 9th Street. And that piece of the project actually is, I included it in the site plan because it was initially a part of the application, but the applicant, there's no development is intended for that, and it is going to be sold by the applicant. The properties on Duff are within the residential medium density zoning district and the single family conservation overlay district. Both of these lots previously contained old homes that had been converted into multifamily buildings. One of them had 6 units and the other had 2 units. Both of them were demolished in 2012. Each lot is allowed by the zoning to have, by the base zoning, to have 4 units on it, which is what the applicant proposes. The single-family conservation overlay zoning allows for single and 2 family homes by right, and anything over that with the approval of a major site development plan, which is what is before you. The SFC requires all new projects comply with design standards. The standards include requirements for roof slope, facade design, including dormers, window dimensions, front doors, porches, stoops, and also height. All other development standards of the zoning ordinance, including parking and landscaping, also apply to the development, and those are not different in the SFC. The proposed project includes 2 one-story buildings with mirrored floor plans. I'll bring those up. You can see site plan here with the 2 buildings, 1 on each lot. And the landscape plan. This is a close-up of one of the buildings. So the project includes 2 of these buildings, 1-story mirrored floor plans with the required architectural features. Each building contains 4 efficiency apartments and shared laundry facilities that are all accessed via a common corridor. Each unit also has access directly to the outdoors and to an individual patio. The front of each unit includes a covered stoop for the primary entrance oriented to Duff Avenue, and the proposed project includes a single shared driveway to Duff Avenue with all parking in the rear. The SFC also does have a maximum number of dwelling units in it, but the plan complies with that, as there were a total of 8 units across the 2 lots, and 8 units are what is being prepared, so there will be no net increase of dwelling units in the single-family conservation overlay. And here are the elevations. In the upper left corner is the front, and below it is the rear of the buildings. And staff does recommend approval. I can take any questions you have.
It was previously an apartment, a home converted into apartments?
Each lot had a building that was constructed as a single-family home that had then been converted into multifamily.
And studio apartments are allowed in this overlay?
The overlay doesn't specify whether they're studio or 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. It's just the total number of units.
Anybody have any questions?
Just a quick one. If I look at attachment A, it says 115 is on that lot that's west of the alley. What's going on? Is it just something to do with the addressing?
Yeah, I tried to clean up the address points in there, so I might have missed one. I see what you're saying there, Anu, the 115, but an errant address point may have gone over to the neighboring property. The way that our addresses work in GIS, it gives you literally every single address point possible that has ever existed throughout time, and so I went in and cleaned them all up for legibility, and I might have missed one.
To me, it looks like that strip, the alley strip that we are looking at or considering today, may have been left over or like of 111 instead.
But there were two strips there. The alleys are in Old Town are 16 feet wide, so there are 2 actually 8-foot wide strips there. Yeah, I don't know that there's no improvement on the alley. I don't know that it technically has an address, and 115 is our.
So there's nothing that's planned for that strip. I mean, I think that addressing needs to be cleared up of what it is exactly. But there's nothing, from what we understand, there's nothing planned on that.
Correct.
North-south strip.
Originally, as part of our discussions with the applicant, there was talk that might be used for driveway access, but long series of conversations about that, and it's not going to happen. All the access is going to be taken directly off Duff. And the applicant has communicated to me that she intends to sell it to one of the neighboring properties.
Okay. Yeah, because the driveway access is sort of what I'm also thinking of, is if the access to the subject 2 sites could actually be through that alley on the night, so that it reduces that curb cut along Duff.
Yeah, we talked at length about the access. Staff did, including with Public Works and with Fire, and the alley access, because it's only it's 8 feet wide there going to it, and there are all kinds of access problems with that, and we determined it wasn't feasible.
Okay.
I know the curb cut is already there. So
That is correct. Yes, there is an existing curb cut on the property line.
and you say that there is a problem if they come out on the alley instead? And first of all, the alley is owned by the applicant.
Yes.
Okay. And,
I mean, the site's not designed that way, and it's not proposed to be. To us, it's immaterial at this point. It's an 8-foot access strip. It doesn't meet our standards for a for a driveway for us to allow it to meet access requirements. So they have the legal right to use the property, but it doesn't meet our driveway design requirements.
Any other questions? Applicant.
Hi, I'm Laura Solson, 1705 Buchanan Drive, which is what we're using as Home Allies' legal address right now. It's my residence, but we're a very, very small nonprofit, okay? And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and being that we're the only thing on the agenda, not making us wait, okay, for this. I have a PowerPoint presentation. It's a quick one. It's going to recap some of what the staff said. I would like to point out this alley, just so you understand. It actually, the old steam pipes to the hospital run under it. So this 16-foot wide strip, half of it, the west half, is owned by the city of Ames, but there are telephone poles in it, in the middle of it, all right? Then there's the 8-foot that the Pikes own that we will take, but we're actually selling it to the property owner at 119 Fifth. She's got a garage that backs up against it, and her tenants won't be able to get in and out if she doesn't have access. So we're going to sell it to her and let her plow it. Okay, so thank you. So you see, here's a colored rendition of what pretty much the front is going to look like. Our architect here, we have Jeff Harris from RMH tonight here. Also in the back of the room, we have our treasurer, Tammy Albright, and Vice President Carrie Winstand. And we worked really hard with the city to make sure we met all the overlay standards. Moving on. Thank you, Benjamin, for doing this. Okay, so we are sustainable long-term homes for individuals and small families at greater risk of homelessness. That's why I formed Home Allies. I'm a former Story County supervisor. Before that, I was a journalist for a long time. I've sat on several committees for over a decade addressing home housing, affordable housing, in the community. And so we were formed to fill a specific need. Moving on, please. So the apartments are not an emergency shelter. We are not a group home. We are not a transitional living center. We are not a bed and breakfast, and we are not a short-term rental. All rumors that I think have circulated for at least a little bit of concern in the community. Next slide, please. We are apartments, sustainable long-term homes for people. Everybody's signing a year's lease, okay? And so really, the fact that this will be for low-income people is only of a courtesy notifying you, given the fact that we have to raise some money in the community. And we've already applied for some grants that have been awarded by various government and quasi-government agencies. But these are apartments, period. Going on, please. We did hold a neighborhood information session on February 7th at the Ames Public Library. We also live streamed it on Facebook. It's now stored on my Facebook page. It's visible. We had 3 members of the public show up. 2 of them were from the Old Town Neighborhood Association. And then one of the next door neighbors. We had a very pleasant conversation. There were no objections. They just wanted some clarification. Is this going to fit in with the standards of the neighborhood? One person did lament that they wish that those old buildings that held the 8 apartments before were still standing, but they had to be torn down because they were in terrible disrepair. This is per the Pikes. They're not here tonight, but okay. So they couldn't be rented out anymore without major repairs. So during that, we discussed what this zoning really is. These are 2 lots, not one. That's the number one misconception that most people have about this property when they drive through. And in the previous slide, you clearly, anybody who's driven to Mary Greeley on 13th already knows where that sign is. It's been up a long time. We'll build to suit. But anyway, so just to recap, we couldn't combine the lots. So that meant that some of these features are costing us double. because of the overlay district. And I think it's important you guys as planning and zoning realize this, that there's some additional cost to this project just by virtue of the zoning. Increased cost on others, and the maximum 648 dwelling units in the zone, which we're not changing from when this number was first set. We had the special design requirements that Benjamin already talked about, and we have to share this one driveway. We did look at various options. Okay, I appreciate the tolerance and the time that the staff put in taking a look at what we could and couldn't do for access here. It also has made it very difficult for these properties to sell, because most people don't want to build a house where they also have to share their driveway and maintain a driveway for the neighbor. Next slide. So obviously we have to meet all the municipal code zoning requirements. We need to be compatible with the surrounding area. And I think that's what your function is tonight. Your responsibility is, are we compatible? We are the yellow box. Clearly, we have many apartments, co-ops, or duplexes around us. This is mixed use of this area. We are on a major arterial street. We are near a school. Okay, that's the ACPC in orange there. There's even a park. All right. But so it's a great established neighborhood that has established with already residents. There's already apartments there. People are already living there. Some of them, by the way, that we probably don't know about are probably low-income residents using Section 8 vouchers. The only difference between us and those residents would be is that because, once again, we're trying to raise funds from the community, we're letting people know that we're going to be housing people who have low incomes. Next slide, please. We can just move on. They showed you a much better rendition of where all this landscaping would be. Once again, representative, just what these look like inside, in case some people still think these are not individual apartments. We've color coded. You see, we've gone beyond what the minimum zoning requirements are for studio or efficiency apartments. Each apartment has a walk-in closet. That's the orange there, and two of the units, the ones circled in red, because remember, this is half of the units, and then it'll be mirrored on the other lot, the other half. That's a fully ADA accessible, as in, so for use by someone who is confined to a wheelchair full-time. So roll-in shower, lowered stove, everything in. And then on the front, it's a little bit larger, and that's to house up to 3 applicants. Would like to note that we are only allowing families or legally defined relationships. For example, a foster parent and a child, or a grandparent who may have custody of a child. We are not receiving any HUD money for this project, just ARPA funds from Story County. The rest of this is all going to hopefully paid for with a loan from a bank and from funds raised in the community and other private grants, donations. The city gave us a $25,000 grant. And the point here is that we are offering long-term sustainable housing, and it's more difficult to have long-term sustainable housing with just people who are rooming together. So that is not going to be allowed. Next. There is where I say the walk-in closets. They're in the orange because it's important, even though it's not required by the zoning, it's important to make it more livable. Also for livability, these kitchens are going to include a full oven stove arrangement and obviously a big refrigerator. These are for long-term occupancy. Finally, the individual patios we feel were important, even though they're once again not required. They not only fit in with the neighborhood more, they promote that outside accessibility, they promote the feeling of neighborhood, and they offer a little bit open space livability again. Each laundry room will be with a washer and dryer for the residents. We also are putting in a fenced dog exercise area and the garden. And originally that strip of land was going to be the garden. But quite frankly, given the problem that the one house has with their garage backing up to that alley, okay, we're just going to sell it to her just for whatever the assessed value is. Okay. And the exercise dog area is important, in fact, because one of our priorities is going to be that people who have service animals. And there are people who, with their service dogs, do not always have an adequate area in an apartment complex or the ability to go ahead and be able to let their animals run in a confined environment. Next, please. I included this merely as a courtesy because, once again, these are apartments, okay? They're individual. And so the fact that we are going to target low-income residents is not is my understanding, germane to you tonight, okay? But this is who will be, we'll have at least 5 of the units for 30% or less of the area average median income. And at most, 3 of them would be for 50%. And that has to do maybe with some applicants who may come into the apartments, maybe unemployed or underemployed, receive some maybe training via, say, the Chamber's AEDC's Workforce Development Program, and then increase their income. So that's it. I want to thank you very much, and I'll answer additional questions.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
I have a few.
Go ahead.
Just going back to what we are looking at from a planning and zoning perspective, just curious, I have a few that don't pertain to that, but I'll come to that. You mentioned this extra cost due to zoning.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Sure. Because we have to put 2 stoops on the building, we have 2 separate buildings, means we need 2 stoops, okay? Those are required under the overlay. So instead of just having one building that could be built over the property line, right? Combining the 2 lots, you can't combine them. So we had to build 2 separate buildings. There's a cost associated with each building. You've got more exterior materials. You have the front stoops. You've got 2 entranceways, 2 hallway layouts. It also impacted whether we were going to be able to put up a 2-story building, which would still be within what's in the neighborhood, but under one building. It costs, square footage costs, every single extra hallway you need costs, every stoop costs. So, and that's just why I'm telling you, it costs. In addition, this is just related to the fire code. Both of these buildings are only about 2,200 square feet each, okay? Almost what is on the main floor of my home in Parkview Heights, okay? But because these are considered commercial buildings for a definition of your code that you've adopted, the city's adopted for the International Building Code, Benjamin or Kelly can help me if I got the name wrong, okay? We have to put in fire suppression systems. We have to put sprinklers in, even though no applicant will be more than about 28.5 feet ever from an outside exit between the patio and then the hallway out. To do that, we have to run 6-inch lines under Duff Avenue. And 2 separate lines. We're gonna have to bore under Duff Avenue. Even though that these units or these lots had water service before, but they had 1-inch mains, which is what normally would be a home in that area. So that's $50,000 to $75,000 right there. Then you add in the fact that, once again, there's 2 of them built together, okay? There's a minimum separation distance required by the fire code. And so it all adds up.
We don't need to recount building and fire.
Well, she
codes.
asked, I'm sorry.
I know, but it's really just not a relevant thing. That's
Yeah.
not even, she asked about zoning. Now you're talking about building code.
Okay,
So completely different subject, no discretion on that
Okay,
issue
all right.
whatsoever.
Sure.
So let's try to keep it focused on the zoning and the site plan
Okay,
review.
so the overlay zoning costs more.
Sure. No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
So there's a shared driveway at this point between both of the properties.
Yes.
I assume there's going to be some sort of agreement that needs to be recorded or needs to be put in place so that both the lots, for example, hypothetically, if in the future one or both the lots are sold to somebody else and they are in different ownerships, then they still continue to use and are still able to use that shared driveway to access the parking at the rear.
We can do that. I mean, it's unlikely. You don't want to hear about the bank requirements for the lending also because of this part of this shared lot. But yes, I'm sure if you want that in there as a condition, we certainly can do that when we transfer the properties over.
Okay. That's just something to sort of be, avoid any future issues if at all the properties are sold. And
It's-
maybe this is something for the staff that I can check later if that's
Yeah.
something that we even look at, or you would look at, or would that be a completely private
So we
issue?
would expect an easement be recorded because it's a shared driveway. We don't typically get into the maintenance,
Okay.
the sharing of maintenance or how that's done. So we would really record an easement that just says it's for shared access, ingress,
Yeah.
egress. on
And that's
property.
what is going to be done
That would,
through
yes,
this
We
proposal.
can do that,
That'll
no
be done
problem. Like I
with
said,
the-
that's why
with
he
part of the
can't
final
sell, he
approval,
hasn't sold
Got
it
it.
already,
Okay.
in part, yeah.
Okay. Then this is not a planning and zoning necessarily question, but you talked about this being more affordable to a certain income group. You're not getting any hard money. How are you planning to identify those people? How are you planning to maintain that affordability and identify?
I'm going to
people who
answer
live in
this as
there.
a courtesy to you. I think it's very important we focus on that when you approve apartments, okay, you are being asked to do a site plan. You're not being asked, I'm not asking for a zoning change or a variance, right? Or a special use permit. So the only reason you even know that we're going to put low-income people in there is because is that we have a public campaign. Could staff help them understand that I'm answering as a courtesy?
Well, I mean, you brought it up, so she's responding to your presentation. It wasn't,
Okay,
it wasn't
all right,
in the
yeah,
staff
just as
report
long
at
as
all.
that's understood,
Yeah,
all
so it
right?
wasn't even in the staff report. You brought it up in your presentation.
Okay,
And so
Sure.
just to be clear, there is no condition that this project has to be used for affordable housing.
Mhm.
That is not why it's being approved
Mm-hmm.
or how it's even being approved. It's being approved as apartments under the zoning ordinance.
so we're going to have applicants fill out an application that also asks about their assets and also asks about their housing stability.
Okay.
And then we'll be scoring them according to their housing stability.
Okay.
Or instability.
Thank you.
Sure.
How's the maintenance? Who's responsible for doing the maintenance?
Sure. So we have built into the budget, the first year, Home Allies is going to manage it, but any maintenance will be done by paid contractors because we don't have that ability. Also, given the fact it's brand new, we're hoping that it doesn't require a lot of maintenance that isn't required under the contract with the Pikes, right? They're the general contractors. They have to provide warranty on this, okay? So going forward, then we built into the budget to pay a professional property management company after the second year, because this is a different model as far as kind of normal funding, how normally somebody would build apartments. We want to keep a really close tab on it the first year, and then we may just go ahead and turn it over to a professional management company, may go ahead and handle it ourselves. Obviously, we built in for snow removal, we built in for grass maintenance. The Kiwanis group has actually asked about how they could do volunteer labor. So I've already presented to one Kiwanis group about them helping to maintain the trees as they're growing, et cetera.
You don't have like a reserve established that you're going to fund to replace the roof when that needs to happen.
So yes, in the budget we do, but we're brand new. So I'm not sure what you're asking me, Doug. We are trying to raise, part of the money we're trying to raise is $200,000 of it is to go into rent subsidies up front for the first 3 years. It's a condition of the bank. Yeah. So yeah. Uh-huh. So there'll be cash up front in the bank. I think that's, you're asking about the reserve.
Well, no, I mean, in 15, 20 years, the roof's going to need to be replaced.
Well, sure. Yeah, that's built. Yeah, we've built that in. While we're not using HUD money standards, we've built the operating costs And what we anticipate the interest rate will be on a 20-year fixed rate mortgage. And we've built that around a 50% loan to value mortgage with deposits into a long-term escrow account every year. So that's included. And HUD sets a maximum about in rent and utilities for what they would pay if they were going to come in and give us 100% funding for an applicant. And so we've built it all around that dollar amount. There aren't a lot of frills here. No dishwashers.
On the alley, that's going to the people at 118 or 119?
It's going to 119. And I know it's interesting to call it an alley because some residents, long-term residents in the neighborhood say it was never a formal alley. It was always just people drove through it. And then, of course, the city had the easement for 8 feet that the city actually may have owned for those steam pipes underneath it. And the other had this, either the Pikes had owned them and before the owners before the Pike had the steam pipes underneath. And actually then it ran through the back of both of these lots and it kept on going up to 10th Street. Well, it was going through somebody's private property on 10th Street also. And he wanted to build a garage. And he built a garage. And so that cut off what was never a formal alley as far as we understand. But the staff did the research. So they can tell you that. So, and it's going to 119. If you're familiar with that street, it's the greenhouse at the corner. Not sure how, but they were allowed to build a garage many decades ago that literally pulls out onto the city and this 8 feet to have to get out to even access 9th Street.
So the whole strip is going to that one address,
Yes.
not just up to their rear property line?
Pretty much, it extends a little bit for it, but it's all, she can have it all for the set sales amount and she can worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, that's a funny thing. I mean, to our knowledge, it hasn't been a real alley for decades.
Yeah, it used to be. I mean, wouldn't be. You ran that neighborhood when I grew up, so there was an alley all
Excellent.
the way,
Yes.
the way down to
Right. Right.
5th Street.
So when the Pikes have been allowing the property owners, tenants at that 119, 119 9th, the Pikes have been allowing them use of that strip of land for their tenants to pull in and out for decades and never charging. One of the things we had to look at, we're a small nonprofit, every dollar is going to count, especially we don't want the liability insurance to cover it. So if we weren't going to use it as a garden, and it became very clear when you physically go out there, her tenants, that garage is useless without being able to pull out of it. You can pull into it, but you can't pull out of it. And so this is the viable answer that keeps us good neighbors, keeps her with tenants, and everybody knows not to drive through it anymore because there's a garage at the other end, a different garage that faces 10th Street. Yeah, it's used for parking and those people pulling into a garage.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Any public comment? When you come up, please introduce yourself. And you've already given her a strip and name, address. Go ahead.
Colby Fangman, 922 Duff. I'm just across the street to the northeast. Just had a couple comments or questions, I guess. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. It's not really contentious, so I don't know why. My main comment deals with the mirrored lot. In the OSFC, it really talks about conserving the existing single-family residential character. And I really question the exact mirror facades exact finishes, exact everything, really capturing that single-family residential character. I can appreciate that it's a larger investment to meet those code rules. So what I'm asking the commission to consider is conditional cosmetic changes, superficial treatments, like different stone columns, different colors, something to make these unique. Couple other items. Which that's the only one that I think is probably a true planning and zoning item. The other one talks about landscaping. The tree on the northeast corner of the lot, the conifer, it's very important to me. I live right across the street. I'd like to see on the landscape plan critical root zone protection. So 1 foot for every inch DBH diameter at your height, at chest height. You don't have a lot of large conifers like that in our neighborhoods. I'd really like to see it preserved. So all I'm talking about is tree protection fencing, not an onerous cost. And then on the landscape itself, this is more of a request to the developer. Native species, not cultivars. They're climate resilient to where we live. The city invested in them through the Public Works Stormwater Program. So yeah, native species. Those are really my items. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, close the public comment section of this. And commission members, any discussion?
I like the project. I think it's along arterial, it's along a corridor, so it's not increasing the existing density of what was existing there before it was demolished in 2012. It's along a bus route, so that's another plus. Infill development, I think overall the use and the project I'm supportive of. I still feel like the parking and the access, especially from 9th Street, is a bit of a missed opportunity, but I think that's fine that there's an existing curb cut along Duff and that works. And there'll be an easement that'll be recorded before this gets like all tied up. So I guess that's all right as well. As far as the design comments that were made by the neighbor, I'm assuming if there's anything more that the city has, I don't think there's anything more that's written in the city code to encourage weighting facades on adjoining developments when they happen together. Is there something that exists right now?
We do not have any
Okay.
such consideration in the code.
I'm sure this zone never contemplated that 2 lots would be next to each other and that there could be a mirrored or a copied structure. I wasn't forecasted that this could possibly happen. So it doesn't deal with asking for variation on a block. It just has that general expectation, as the speaker said, to try and be of single family character. And specific architectural features are called out, but variation is not mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, since there's no requirement in the code, I'm not sure there's something that can be required from the developer to do that. To the extent the developer is able to address it, that's encouraged for you to work with. And
so to be clear, I think we included this at the back of the site plan. So there's findings for the site development plan, and then at the very end, there's a excerpt of the overlay zone, what standards apply. And I believe what the speaker was referencing was letter C that said housing development shall be in character with the surrounding neighborhood, or plural neighborhoods, in terms of scale and character of architectural elements. That's the standard that you can apply to the project.
sorry, tell me where you're looking at
Should be
again.
Very end, at the very end of the addendum.
Attachment C.
No, before, yep. attachment.
Oh, got it.
Yep, we got
Thank
it
you.
There, sorry. Yep, so letter C is probably the only relevant approval criteria to architectural character that's not a specific design requirement
Sure.
itself.
Yeah, like I think since there's no specific requirement on some of those requiring those that variation in building facades, I don't think there's something that the P&Z can ask the developer to do. But like I said, it's encouraged to the extent possible that you can vary, it's encouraged to do as you are building this place out. But overall, I think it's a good project. I'm supportive of it.
I agree with New that I would like to see something different on the access to the site off of 9th instead of Duff. We have enough traffic on Duff as it is. And I hope the applicant listens to the neighbor. It wouldn't cost anything more to put different siding on the two places. But but other than that, I like the idea. In the city, with the city, there's no problem with the setbacks on each side in between the two buildings.
The applicant, no, the project complies with the setbacks on all sides.
So yeah, so to be clear, each lot individually meets every element of the zoning ordinance, except for the one distinction because of the mandatory shared driveway. There's no separation of paving on the property line. That's the only thing that is not individually compliant on each lot. So all setbacks, all landscaping, each structure meets the codes on their own.
So you had to do a variance or something?
Nope. So we have another standard that only allows for shared access on arterial streets, so that trumps where you normally can put a driveway. So since that's the only place you have a driveway, you're allowed to put it down a property line. Otherwise, you normally wouldn't be allowed to do that. So there's no variances. It's a requirement because of arterial street access.
And the number of parking places,
Yep. So
what is the minimum needed? correct?
yep, for each structure on each lot.
Doug,
I
anything?
mean, it's a worthy project, and wish you luck, Loris, in your endeavor as a landlord.
I just want to mention that I'll be abstaining out of a potential conflict of interest, so as to avoid any even potential look of the case. Kelly and I discussed the matter beforehand. So my husband works for the architecture firm that put the designs together. So I shall be abstaining this evening.
Mike?
Well, the problem with being the last person to make comments is everybody's pretty much said what you would have said. But I think it's a good project, and I'd like to wish you good luck with it. And hopefully you can kind of work together and get some of the concerns that he has taken care of.
The only other question I have for you, Kelly, is I know somebody, and I'm friends with somebody a block away. But it shouldn't be a conflict of interest.
No,
I've
you
never
have to have
contacted them or
You
anything.
have to have financial interest, direct financial interest in the issue, or so much personal bias that you can't set it aside and make your own decisions. So I don't believe that rises to either of those situations.
So I hope the applicant does listen to the neighbors and be a good neighbor. Okay, at this time, I'll entertain any motion.
Move approval of alternative one, that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends that the city council approve the major site development plan for 913 and 915 Duff Avenue and 115 9th Street.
I'll second.
Point of, Kelly, a point. Are we including anything on 115 now? That's at alley.
I mean, there's really nothing being approved on that piece of land. It's not really relevant to the project. It's just shown on the site plan because it's under common ownership.
So does it need to be removed or needs to?
Well, it's on.
Doesn't matter.
It's shown on the graphic. It's going to be in the final plans that go to council. So I would just say keep including the address for now.
Okay, we have a motion and Mike, you seconded it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. So approved.
And Ruth abstains.
I officially abstain.
And one abstention.
So with this recommendation, the item is going to be scheduled for a hearing with the city council on March 8th. For anybody in the audience that wants to attend that meeting, that's when it will be.
Okay, commission comments. Any? Okay, staff comments next month.
It's very likely we'll have a meeting the first week of March. Wasn't 100% sure which items would be on the agenda. That's why I didn't get a tentative agenda. The only other comment I have is the city council did complete their goal setting efforts last night and did program some work for the planning and housing department. A lot of it's going to be focused on Plan 2040 implementation. There's some other smaller items that they'll be getting done here this spring. But the most significant one that's going to be essentially ongoing or restarting, depending on how you want to look at that, is the urban fringe plan update with Story County. So Story County staff and Ames staff are going to work together to draft the plan to put out for public comment here later in the spring. And that'll go through, it's essentially an amendment to the comprehensive plan. So it'll come back through the Planning and Zoning Commission for a hearing and eventually back to City Council. So that'll be the next large thing that you'll be participating in. And then there's some other initiatives that are going to start later this summer. So, but the Ames Urban Fringe Plan will be the thing that you are involved in next. That's more of a large scale issue.
I forgot to ask, is there anything that's been decided about the Bloomington Cemetery?
So that's going to hearing next week. The developer is going to accept responsibility for maintaining the integrity of the cemetery and protecting it. So that agreement will go with the annexation next Tuesday.
He's going to be maintaining the cemetery?
He's going to take the responsibilities. Yeah. So under state law, I don't remember what we went through with you guys, but under state law, the property owner can't accept the responsibility in lieu of the city or county having that responsibility, and they've agreed to do that.
Okay. I was just curious on that one.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. I guess I don't have to say. We are now adjourned.